Yo, what's going on guys? My name is Asphyxiate and today I want to have a look at some really useful items to have when you're leveling up to level 60 in the Shadowlands. Right now we're about 6 days away from the actual expansion launching, so I figured that now's a good time to recap some really useful information and some items to have when you're leveling up. I've seen a lot of other video guides that cover a similar topic, and a lot of them have the basic stuff, but there's a few extra things that I haven't seen any guides cover, so I figured I'd make my own just to make sure that I've got all the information in one spot, and hopefully that'll help some of you guys out as well. If this video is interesting or useful to you in some way, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below as well. The first thing we'll look at are consumables. These are pretty self-explanatory, but you'll want to make sure you've stocked up on food, DPS potions, healing potions, flasks, and augment runes if you don't have the reusable one. You also want to make sure you've gemmed and enchanted the gear you're actually going to be leveling in. Now when it comes to DPS potions, there's a few that you'll want to make sure you have. First of all, there's the Potion of Unbridled Fury, which is really good for single target. Then there's things like the Potion of Empowered Proximity or the Superior Battle Potion of Agility for AoE situations. And then in the event that you might have a pull or you might chain pull for more than 25 seconds, it could even be worth using the Potion of Prolonged Power. It gives significantly less main stat, but it lasts for a minute, so it depends on how you're pulling and what pull it is that you're going to be using your potion on. So yeah, those are the main ones that you want to make sure you've stocked up on. Obviously, if you're a strength or an intellect user, you just want to make sure you get your strength or intellect potions instead. Now for food buffs, the food buff you'll most likely want is the Borellus Blood Sausage. This gives 13 in your main stat, which is generally stronger than 14 in your secondary stat that most of the other food buffs provide. You could also look at splurging out and buying some feasts. They give more of your main stat, but they also cost significantly more. However, if you're not planning on dying or swapping food buffs like mid-run, then it might be worth it. It just depends on how seriously you want to go and how much money you want to invest in it. It's also worth noting the Battle Tartar. Now, this is an old, I think it's from Legion food buff, where every time you get a killing blow on an enemy that it gives experience, you get a small speed boost. So if you're chain pulling and continuously killing mobs, you can basically have the speed buff up 100% of the time. So it could speed up your whole leveling process. Now, if you're leveling solo, or your group doesn't naturally have all the class buffs, it'll be worth buying some war scrolls to make up for any buffs that you're missing. This might be fortitude, attack power, intellect, etc. And then if you don't have a class that can use a real bloodlust or a real heroism, then it'll be worth buying some drums as well. If you weren't already aware, the drums and the war scrolls aren't as effective as the real buff, but if you don't have the buff in the first place, it's better than nothing, so you might as well have it. The next 3 items I want to talk about are insanely useful, probably the strongest item you can use to speed up your leveling process, and yet I haven't seen a single video talk about them. The items that I'm referring to are the oddly shaped horn, the tuft of yak fur, and the cracked Radinex control gem. Now if you don't know what these are, they summon a rideable yak or hoverboard that moves at 410% movement speed for 25 or 30 seconds, and they've only got a 3-second cooldown. So you can use these back to back to cover insanely long distances really fast. Now the downside to these 3 items is that they've only got 3 charges and they're all unique. What this means is you can only have one of each of them in your bag at any given time, and you'll notice that the oddly shaped horn and the tuft of yak fur are both soulbound. However, the cracked Radinex control gem is not soulbound. What this means is you can farm a whole bunch of them on your ults or your main, send them to another character and leave them in the mailbox, and then return them to the character that you're going to be leveling on just before Shadowlands launches. And this way, once you've used the 3 charges of the Radinex control gem, you can drop a portable mailbox or go to a mailbox in the closest town or when you're next in a town, grab another one, and you're good to use another 3 charges. And you can keep doing this throughout your entire leveling process. There are also 2 really cool items that come from Darkmoon Faire that can be used to speed up your leveling process. The first one is the Checkered Flag, which is pretty self-explanatory. It increases your mount movement speed by 30% for 10 minutes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as soon as an item has limited charges on it, I end up just saving it for the best possible situation or the perfect situation, and I just never end up using them. So why not use them in your leveling process to speed up the whole ordeal and, get ahead of the pack and just get to level 60 a bit faster. The second item is, of course, the Darkmoon Cannon. Now, this isn't always going to be usable. It's a 30-minute cooldown, and the situations where you would be able to effectively use this might be a little bit harder to come by than some of the other items that we've covered, but this is really good if you pair it with a Goblin Glider. Now what it does is it launches you out of a cannon, and you'll just go quite a long distance as is, but if you pop a Goblin Glider at the peak of your height, you can essentially cover, I don't know, double or triple the amount of distance, and also take no fall damage in the process, and you just move faster than you would on mounted speed, and you also don't have to worry about terrain. Like, you can just fly over, ravines, gorges, cliffs, whatever, and just get to where you're trying to get to a lot faster and a lot more efficiently. Now, similar to the Darkmoon Cannon, but a bit harder to get, is the Falling Flame. Now, this is a low drop percent from a rare on Timeless Isle from Mr. Pandaria. It's also only got 50 charges, but it's actually so fucking insane, man. Like, it's got a 1 hour cooldown, but it just launches you so high in the air and you go so fast. And then what you can do is you can jump off a small cliff or a building or something like that, pop a Goblin Glider, and then use the Falling Flame. And as soon as you reach the pinnacle of your height, you'll be able to control it with the Goblin Glider and just go. You could literally cover an entire zone with this one item. Now, it's kind of min-max, and again, there aren't that many times where you have to go as far as you would with this Falling Flame. But if you really want to min-max, you might as well just get it and have it. And then if you find a situation where you just need to go really, really far, you can just pop it and use it. The next thing I want to talk about is items that actually increase the amount of experience that you earn. The first one is the Draft of the 10 Lands. Now, if you haven't seen the patch notes, the Draft of the 10 Lands is going to be capped at level 50 as soon as Shadowlands launches. However, you can still use this from 50 to 51. So if you buy 2 of them, you can pop one just before the expansion launches and get 10% extra experience all the way through level 50. And then just before you hit 51, you use another one and you'll have another hour of that 10% experience bonus. Next, you've got the 3 guild battle standards. Now, these increase the amount of experience that you earn from killing enemies by 5, 10, and 15% for all guild members within 100 yards. They last for 15 minutes, however, if you move too far away from where you've placed it, they will despawn, and they've got a 10-minute cooldown. Now, it's worth noting that these don't share a 10-minute cooldown. So if you use the Epic Guild banner, it'll go on a 10-minute cooldown, but the other 2 only go on a shared 2-minute cooldown. What this means is you can actually rotate through each of these banners to maintain a relatively high uptime on the experience bonus. If you're leveling in a group, you can actually get all of your group members to buy these, and you can just cycle through the 15% banners. Then if you run out of those and you need and it's not off cooldown again, then you can pop the 10% ones, and then the same with the 5% ones. This just gives you a pretty high uptime on a 5, 10, or 15% experience buff for pretty much your entire leveling process. The third thing you want to think about is whether or not you want to level with War Mode on. Depending on your faction balance in your region that you play on, you can get anywhere from a 5 to 30% experience bonus by leveling with War Mode on. The downside to this is, of course, it means that you can be ganked or PvP'd while you're trying to level. If you think you're going to be leveling quite quickly and you're going to be able to get ahead of the pack, it might be worth playing with it on just to get the extra experience and get ahead of the pack, and therefore you're not dealing with as many players. And you can always turn it off in any rested zone. Whereas turning it on, you have to go all the way back to Stormwind to Orgrimmar to do so, and it's not really a viable option if you're trying to speed level through Shadowlands. I will quickly address the experience gem. It was unfortunately nerfed as pre-patch came out, but I thought I'd just quickly mention it just so that I don't have people in the comments saying that I forgot about it. Unfortunately, it was nerfed and it was changed to swim speed increase. The next 2 items I want to talk about are Gunshoes and Goblin Gliders. These are 2 staple items for any speed leveler, and they're just insanely useful and have so many uses that you want to make sure you stockpile on a lot of them to make sure you don't run out while you're leveling. Gunshoes have a 3-minute cooldown, and you strap some guns to your feet and just go really, really fast. Now, this movement speed isn't quite as fast as the Yak or the cracked Radanex control gem that we looked at earlier. However, it still is faster than mounted speed, and when you use it, you instantly start moving faster instead of having to cast your mount. What this means is you'll likely want to be using these on cooldown whenever you're moving from killing mobs and going back to hand in a quest, or any distance that's about 30 seconds of travel time. It'll just get you there faster and you don't have to spend the time mounting up, and it's just going to make your whole leveling time that much faster. The next item, of course, are Goblin Gliders. These are pretty self-explanatory, but they're just really useful to prevent fall damage, or, if you're jumping off a cliff or a mountain, covering a long distance and not having to worry about following a road or going over uneven terrain, etc. They're just really good for gap closing and making sure you don't die to fall damage, and they're just an item that you want to make sure you have enough of. Even as a demon hunter, I want to make sure I have a bunch of these because they actually take me further than my normal demon hunter glide, and they travel faster than my normal Demon Hunter glide. Not to mention the fact that you can control the direction, unlike Mage's slow fall. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the gear that you actually level in. If you have a bunch of sockets, it'll be worth using the 5% and 3% movement speed gems just to make you that much faster on foot. This will help especially if you're a slow or a mobile class, especially when it comes to mob tagging and trying to just compete for quest items and stuff like that. The next thing to take into consideration is that as soon as you go through the portal into the Shadowlands, all of your Azurite traits as well as your neck essences are no longer active. What this means is that you want to try and get the highest item level Azurite gear possible, even if it has the worst possible Azurite traits on it. The reason for this is that the higher item level Azurite gear you have, the more main stat and more stamina you get from it, and it doesn't matter about the Azurite traits because they're not going to be active in Shadowlands anyway. So you might as well use your last remaining Titan Residium or, item restore some high item level Azurite gear that you've already destroyed, just to give you a bit more main stat and stamina for your leveling process. Now, depending on your spec and your class and how strong your trinkets are, you might consider using something like Hunger of the Pack. This is a trinket that drops in Legion that every time you get a kill that gives experience or honor, you get a 30% movement speed buff for 10 seconds. This, coupled with the Bear Tartar, means that every time you get a killing blow, you've just got a pretty significant speed boost without having to pop any cooldowns or anything like that. If you're chain pulling mobs, you're basically going to have a 100% uptime on this, or even if you're AoE killing mobs, it'll just give you a nice speed buff for when you start pulling your next pack. The last thing you want to think about is the gear that you level in and how useful it's going to be in a leveling situation. For example, for Demon Hunters, the Bile-Stained Korg Tusk is a very strong single target weapon. However, it's not that good in a leveling environment because the chances of mobs living long enough for you to stack up the poison 3 times is really, really low unless it's like an elite mob for a quest or something like that. But even then, you're better off just swapping to this weapon if you need to, or just not even worrying about it because the difference is going to be relatively small. Similarly, I've got Merecth's Fang. This was a very, very strong Demon Hunter trinket in AoE situations. So you might think, great, I'm going to be like doing massive mob pulls and just like AoEing everything down. However, the logic behind why this was so strong is because of the amount of haste that we got from Furious Gaze. And because Furious Gaze is an Azurite trait and isn't going to be active in Shadowlands, it basically means that Merecth's Fang isn't going to be strong anymore. So there's a few like random things you sort of have to consider and decide what you want to use when leveling. Like even the Diver's Folly, I mean, in theory, it could be good. Like if you get a useful proc, it might be good 3 target cleave damage. But the odds of you like having enough uptime on a mob to build up the damage to be stored to do effective damage when it procs, it's just unlikely that that's going to happen. So I'm going to be better off leveling with a second Rathian weapon instead of the Diver's Folly. It's just small things like that that might make you slightly more efficient in leveling or give you better DPS while leveling. And so if you can put a bit of thought into it and min-max what gear you want to use when leveling, then making sure that it's all gemmed and enchanted in advance, you're going to be in a much better situation for leveling through Shadowlands. Anyways guys, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you found this video useful or informative. If you did, please hit that subscribe button or the like button. If I forgot something, then let us know down in the comments below. I'll have a link to all of the items that I went over in the description below, as well as a link to my Twitch if you want to come and check me out live. I'll be streaming a lot when Shadowlands goes live, and I'm really, really excited for it. But yeah, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in Shadowlands.